Adrian had always loved journeys. He believed that every path, every turn, and every sunrise seen from a bus window carried meaning. Yet this time, as he packed his small leather bag, he knew the journey ahead was unlike any other. This was not a holiday trip, nor a work assignment. This was the road to his last destination, a place he had to reach before the final chapter of his life quietly closed. At 68, Adrian's body was no longer the strong vessel it once was. The doctors had given him a timeline, one that wrapped itself around his thoughts like a tightening rope. But instead of waiting in silence, Adrian decided to travel one last time. He wanted to see the places he had missed, to remember the laughter he once shared, and to meet the people who had touched his life along the way. His daughter Claire begged him not to go alone. "Dad, you don't have to do this by yourself," she said, her voice trembling with worry. She had always been protective, especially after losing her mother years ago. Adrian placed his hand over hers and smiled gently. "This road is mine, Claire. You'll understand one day." He kissed her forehead and promised to call when he could. Early the next morning, he took the first bus out of his hometown. He chose a window seat as he always had, watching as the familiar streets slipped away like pages turning in a book. The bus rattled softly, carrying him past green fields, small towns, and lonely stretches of road. Each passing scene stirred a memory: childhood summers by the river, youthful dreams of adventure, the sound of laughter that once filled his home. With every mile, Adrian felt both the heaviness of farewell and the lightness of freedom. There was sadness in knowing that this journey was his last, yet there was peace in accepting it. He was not running away from death. He was walking toward life, one last time. The bus stopped briefly at a small town. Children ran past with ice creams in their hands, their carefree giggles filling the air. Adrian smiled, reminded of Claire when she was little. For a moment he wished she was by his side. But deep down, he knew this journey was meant for him alone, a path of reflection, closure, and quiet courage. That evening, as the bus pulled into a coastal town, where the sea stretched endlessly toward the horizon, Adrian stepped down slowly, leaning on his cane. The salty air filled his lungs and he whispered to himself, "The road begins here." He didn't know how many days he had left, but he knew this: the journey had started, and he was ready to walk it with an open heart. The coastal town greeted Adrian, with the sound of waves and the cries of seagulls overhead. The streets were lined with old shops, some freshly painted, others worn by salt and time. As he walked slowly along the cobblestones, he felt as though the years had folded back on themselves. This was where his youth had once bloomed, a place filled with laughter, mischief, and friendship. He stopped in front of a cafe with peeling blue paint. The sight stirred something deep within him. He remembered this very place. Decades ago, when he and his best friend, Samuel, used to sit for hours, sipping coffee and talking about dreams that seemed larger than life. Adrian's heart pounded as he pushed the door open. Inside, the cafe smelled of roasted beans and sea breeze. The chatter of locals filled the room, but Adrian's eyes searched for something familiar. At a corner table sat an elderly man, hunched slightly, reading a newspaper. His hair was silver, his face lined with years, but the eyes that looked up were unmistakable. "Adrian?" the man said, his voice carrying both shock and joy. "Samuel," Adrian whispered, and before he knew it, the two men were embracing like boys again, tears stinging their eyes. They spent hours together, sharing stories of all that had passed. Samuel spoke of his children and grandchildren, of the fishing boat he once owned, of the mistakes and triumphs that life had handed him. Adrian listened, smiling, adding his own stories, of Claire, of the love he had lost, of the quiet strength he had found in life's storms. At one point, Samuel lowered his voice. "I always regretted not keeping in touch. There were so many times I thought of writing to you." Adrian shook his head gently. "Don't regret the past, old friend. Life takes us on different roads. What matters is that we found each other again, here and now." They laughed about their youthful mischief, sneaking into the harbor at night, racing barefoot along the beach, making promises under the stars. For a moment, it was as if time itself had bent backward, allowing them to relive those golden days. When the evening came, and it was time to part, Samuel pressed something small into Adrian's palm. It was a seashell, worn smooth by the sea. "Do you remember this? We collected it one summer when we swore we'd never forget each other." Adrian closed his fingers around it, his throat tightening. "Yes," he said softly, "and I never did." They embraced one last time. Two lives that had crossed and parted, yet found their way back together, even briefly. As Adrian walked away, the seashell warm in his hand, he felt a renewed strength. His journey wasn't about places alone. It was about reconnecting with the pieces of himself he had left behind. That night, sitting by the ocean, Adrian whispered to the waves, "Thank you for giving me this moment." The journey was only beginning, but his heart was already lighter. After leaving the coastal town, Adrian traveled north into the mountains. The air grew cooler, sharper, filled with the scent of pine. The bus climbed winding roads, each turn revealing valleys wrapped in mist and rivers glinting like silver ribbons. Adrian leaned against the window, his seashell resting safely in his pocket, a reminder that life's treasures were often small and fragile. He found a modest guest house tucked between tall evergreens. The wooden lodge was warm inside, lit by a crackling fire and the hum of voices. Most of the guests were young, backpackers, hikers and dreamers chasing adventure. Adrian felt out of place at first, a weary traveler among the bright-eyed. Yet, to his surprise, they welcomed him with curiosity and kindness. One evening, as snow began to fall softly outside, Adrian sat near the fire with a group of them. They asked about his journey, their eyes shining with genuine interest. Adrian took a deep breath and spoke honestly. "I am walking toward my last destination," he said. His voice was calm, steady. Not to escape life, but to meet it with open arms. The group fell silent. The crackle of the fire was the only sound between them. Finally, a young woman with dark hair whispered, "That's the bravest thing I've ever heard." Adrian smiled gently. "It isn't bravery, it's acceptance. I've lived long enough to know that fear steals the joy of living, but when you accept the end, every step becomes a gift." The young travelers began to share their own stories, their dreams, their fears, their unspoken hopes. One wanted to be a writer but feared rejection. Another dreamed of traveling the world, but worried about disappointing her family. They spoke freely, as though Adrian's presence had given them permission to bare their hearts. Adrian listened carefully, offering no judgments, only warmth. He realized that wisdom was not about giving answers, but about being present, showing that it was safe to speak and safe to dream. For the first time in years, he felt like a bridge between generations, carrying lessons across time. Before he left the mountain town, one of the travelers approached him with a gift, a small leather-bound journal. "Write it all down," she said softly. "Your journey, your thoughts, your memories. That way someone else can walk with you, even when you're gone." Adrian held the journal to his chest, deeply moved. "Thank you," he whispered. That night, alone in his room, he opened the first page. With slow, deliberate strokes, he began to write, not just about the road, but about life, love, mistakes, forgiveness, and the beauty of simple moments. The words flowed like a river, and for the first time, Adrian felt as though his journey was not just for him. It was a gift to those who would come after. When he closed the book, he whispered into the quiet, "The road teaches us through strangers, too," and with that, he drifted into a peaceful sleep, ready for the miles still ahead. The next stretch of Adrian's journey was the hardest. His body had begun to slow, his legs weak, and his breath shorter than before, yet his determination carried him forward. Each morning, he rose with the journal by his side, writing a few lines before setting out again. His handwriting wavered, but his words grew deeper, more like reflections than records. After days of travel, Adrian arrived at the river he had longed to see for years. It stretched wide and calm, its waters shimmering beneath the afternoon sun. The sound of it was gentle, like an old lullaby, steady and endless. For Adrian, the river was more than water. It was a symbol, a reminder of the passage of time, of beginnings and endings flowing into one another. He sat on the grassy bank, leaning on his cane, and allowed the memories to wash over him. He thought of his late wife, her laughter still echoing in the corners of his mind. He remembered the first time he held Claire as a newborn, her tiny fingers curling around his thumb. He thought of his childhood summers, barefoot in the fields, chasing dreams too big for a boy to hold. All those moments, joy, sorrow, loss, love, flowed through him like the river itself. His eyes stung with tears, but his heart was strangely light. Adrian opened his journal and began to write again. Words poured out as if guided by the water before him. "To those I leave behind, know this. Life is not measured by the years we are given, but by the moments we truly live. Do not fear endings. They are not walls, but doors. Each goodbye is a bridge to another hello. Walk your path with courage and remember, every step matters, The sun dipped lower, painting the river in hues of orange and gold. Adrian closed the journal, holding it against his chest. He whispered softly into the wind, "Thank you for every step, for every face, for every smile." As night fell, he built a small fire by the riverbank. The flames danced gently, their glow reflected on the water. He felt a sense of farewell, not just to the river, but to the life he had lived. Yet it wasn't sadness that filled him. It was peace, the kind that comes when a man has given all he could and received, more than he ever deserved. He fell asleep to the sound of the river, its steady song wrapping around him like a blanket. When he awoke at dawn, weak but content, he knew it was time to take the final steps of his journey. The river had given him what he needed: closure, acceptance, and the courage to face the end with an open heart. With slow, deliberate movements, Adrian packed his journal and seashell into his bag. He looked at the river one last time, whispered a quiet goodbye, and began walking toward his last destination. Adrian's final stop was a quiet hospice tucked away in the countryside. The building was small but surrounded by wide fields where wildflowers swayed gently in the breeze. It was not a place of sorrow, but of calm acceptance. Here people came not to fight the inevitable, but to embrace it with dignity and peace. Claire was already there when Adrian arrived. She rushed to his side, her eyes brimming with tears as she helped him settle into his room. "Dad, you made it," she whispered, her hand wrapped tightly around his. Adrian gave her a tired but warm smile. "Yes, my dear." The road was long, but it was worth every step. On the small bedside table, he placed two treasures, the seashell Samuel had given him, and the leather-bound journal filled with his reflections. Claire noticed them immediately. "What are these?" she asked. Adrian lifted the seashell, a reminder of friendship, of promises that never truly fade. Then he touched the journal. "And this is my gift to you and to anyone who wishes to walk with me, even when I am gone." Claire held the journal close, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I don't want you to go," she whispered. Adrian squeezed her hand gently. "My sweet girl, no one really goes. We leave pieces of ourselves behind, in the love we gave, the words we wrote, the memories we shared. I'll always be with you, in every sunrise, in every step you take." The days that followed were quiet, filled with moments of reflection, soft laughter, and gentle silence. Sometimes Claire would read passages from the journal aloud, her voice trembling. Adrian would listen, smiling faintly, proud that his journey had found a voice through her. One evening, as the golden light of dusk streamed through the window, Adrian's breathing grew shallow. Claire sat by his side, holding his hand tightly. "Was it worth it, Dad?" she asked softly. Adrian's eyes, though heavy, still carried warmth. "Every step, Claire. Every single step." He closed his eyes, his lips curved into the faintest smile, as if he were seeing something beyond the walls of the hospice. Perhaps the river flowing endlessly, perhaps the faces of those he had loved waiting on the other side. His hand rested peacefully in Claire's, and with one final breath he let go. The room fell silent, but there was no heaviness. Only serenity, like a candle gently flickering out after lighting 1,000 others. Claire pressed the seashell to her chest and held the journal close. Though her heart ached, she felt her father's words guiding her. Life is not about the destination, but the courage to walk the road. And so, Adrian's journey ended, not in sorrow, but in peace. His last destination was not a place of endings, but of beginnings, where love and memory lived on in those he left behind.